Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Reset with Raven. I am here with someone who has captivated me since the moment I came across his IG page, and I know you all will be fascinated with him as well. Ryan D. Lang, MD, MPH, is a certified life coach focused on empowering Black millennials to find their life purpose and navigate major life transitions. He is also an actor and a dually board certified internal medicine and preventative medicine physician. A native of Huntsville, Alabama, Dr. Lang previously served as a medical unit intern with both the Dr. Oz Show and ABC News. He is a graduate of Oakwood University, Vanderbilt University School of Medicine, and the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He received his life coach certification from the Life Coach Training Institute in 2020. Clearly, Ryan is everything and more. Welcome, Dr. Ryan Lang.
Thank you, Raven. It's so good to be with you. Hello, everyone watching.
So, we're just going to jump right into it. So, Ryan has released a new book entitled Project Reset. Dr. Ryan, you dedicated your book to your mentor and friend. Yes, wave it, see it there. You dedicated your book to your mentor and friend, Dr. Gregor W., aka Doc Branch. Share with us what Doc means to you and how he's impacted your life.
So thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening for this interview. I really appreciate, and I have really appreciated your page and your platform as well. So it's such an honor for me to connect with you here. And as to your question, as it relates to Dr. Gregory Branch, Dr. Branch is someone who I have known now for probably about 6 or 7 years. I first met him during my residency at Johns Hopkins. So I did both of my residencies at Johns Hopkins, both in internal medicine and preventive medicine. And during my internal medicine residency, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Branch. And to give a little bit of background for your viewers, so Dr. Branch is also a Black physician. He also is an internist. He trained at Johns Hopkins as well. So given those similarities in our experiences, we already, from my first time meeting him, hit it off, so to speak, just given that we had, the same path as it related to our career. And the first time I met him was actually in the context of some work that I was doing with the Baltimore County Health Department in Baltimore, the Baltimore, Maryland area. And Dr. Branch is actually the head of the public health department for Baltimore County. So in addition to his clinical work, he also has a very, long career in public health. So that was one aspect in which I had, been able to observe and to gain so much respect for Dr. Branch. But one of the other things that I learned about Dr. Branch very shortly after meeting him was just noting just the amazing artistic excellence that Dr. Branch also exemplified. And, a little bit later after I met him, I realized that he also was very active with Johns Hopkins as not only a choir director for a choir that was sort of combined with staff members and community members from the Hopkins community, but he also was a director of stage plays. And in that area or that arena, I was able to also work with Dr. Branch, both as sort of like off stage and then on stage. So I was able to be not only a mentee of Dr. Branch as it related to the physician aspect, but also the artistic aspect. And I learned so much from Dr. Branch, and I will always be grateful to him for exposing me and providing opportunities for me. And, when I thought about, people who inspired me in my path, especially as it related to my personal reset, Dr. Branch was one of the first people that came to mind because he was just so inspiring for me, inspirational for me, and giving me the confidence and the courage to go for what I want. So that's a little bit or probably a lot about Dr. Branch and the impact that he had on my life personally.
So there, I want to dive deeper into that. So you talked about your personal reset, and then you also talked about your exposure to artistic expression. Tell us more about what you found in this time on stage and off stage that led up to your personal reset, as well as what did you find about yourself in terms of that artistic expression that maybe you haven't hadn't at the time maybe experienced, or it was something that developed or grew over time for you. Tell us about how that came to be, that artistic expression as well as that personal reset.
So I will say that my involvement within theater, which is primarily the area where I've practiced, as it relates to artistic expression and that sense of acting, is fairly new. So I will say that I've been in two stage plays, both in Baltimore, and those were both in 2019, so a little over a year ago. And even prior to 2019, I was drawn to theater. I loved going to theater. I loved the stage, and I even loved television. And in many aspects, especially like sitcom television is very closely connected to theater because it's almost like you're seeing a play on screen. So for years and years, I've just been fascinated by that aspect of entertainment and having the opportunity to be an actor, to be on stage. I was in a play or two when I was much younger, like when I was like in elementary school, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't necessarily think that would be something that I would want to continue doing. But I certainly loved it, and I had the opportunity to once again get involved much later in life as an adult. And one of the things I can distinctly remember the experience being on stage and making the audience laugh. And I just absolutely loved it. It was just such just an amazing experience and I think with acting in general, part of the draw towards acting is being able to, impact the emotions of the audience and to be able to have that immediate feedback, in terms of being on stage, being in character, and then being able to see the immediate reaction of the audience to, the character that I was portraying. I thought that was just so enriching and just it was such an amazing experience. So that was life changing for me, and just to be on stage to experience that, I said I want to experience more of this. I want to do this more, and that was the beginning, of me wanting to pursue additional opportunities and experiences in acting, and that's what I'm working towards even now.
I didn't know all of that about your history and kind of what the progression that led into you being an actor. And just fun fact, I don't think I shared this with you, and I'm sure the greater audience doesn't know this, but um, I'm working with a coach right now, and one of the things that we're talking about in me just feeling like that I am living a full, complete, whole life and being making sure that I am representing who I am and making sure I'm walking out and living my purpose. One of the journaling questions that I had last week was, what did you love to do as a child?
Mm.
And the first thing that came up, I mean, the first thing that hit my mind was acting.
Wow.
So when I was younger, I did a lot of community theater.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking when I was on a stage, there was almost as if I got a bit of a rush. Like with the looking in the audience looking back at me, the lights, the big lights, having the bold makeup, and then knowing that I had to project, that I had to perform and give an experience. And evoke emotion
Hmm.
from the stage. So I can completely relate to you as you're sharing your journey and that exposure and how you're like, oh, I really like this. And I feel that this is something that I want to do as a career. I want to talk more about you are so many things that I'm just so impressed by. And one of the things is an accomplished physician. Can you share with us what that journey has been like for you, as you still are, you will always be an accomplished physician, but as you have a reset or add an additional layer to who Ryan is, can you share what that's been like? I'm known in the healthcare community as X, or as the physician, and now I'm pursuing something that's different. What has that journey been like for you? I'm super curious about that.
Yeah, and first of all, I hope you do follow up with pursuing community theater, pursuing theater. Even now, I think that would be awesome. And I will say that the experience of becoming a physician and being a physician is one of the one of the greatest experiences of my life, in that it's provided such an amazing perspective on so many other areas of life and just the world and other people. Being able to care for people in some of their happy moments and also at some of their lowest moments. I think that you get such an amazing perspective about the human experience, and you talk with families, you talk with people who are close to people who are perhaps suffering from major health issues, and you understand what are some of the social impacts of, what are the social factors that contribute to perhaps poor health outcomes, which was one of the major things that I really, dealt with during the early parts of my training, my medical training. And I will say that that experience of becoming a physician is something that and I actually had a friend who I went to medical school with who asked me, do you regret being a physician, just based on, my interest in art and, wanting to pursue that path as well. Um, and I don't regret it. I think that even with the new assurance, the new realization that, I love the arts, I love theater, I want to pursue that. I think that there's still such a great, um, it's just such a great privilege to have been
Mm.
able to become a physician and to have that experience and that foundation. And I think that there's so much that can be influenced even as an artist, having that background, And I still am a physician, as you said, that part of my identity will never go away. And, I still work as a physician, though not clinically. I still work in a health setting. And I will say that one of the things, sort of to answer one of your questions about, the process of sort of uh, changing the identity, if you will, from being a physician to an artist. I will say that was difficult, in terms of sort of looking at my identity and how much of my identity I placed in my role, my job, my occupation as a physician. And I think that in so many cases, not only in medicine, but especially in medicine, I think that so many people assign so much value to themselves based on the fact that, that's what they do, and I think that especially now, in this pandemic, I think that a lot of people, they put people who are healthcare workers on a pedestal, because we're healthcare workers are deemed as heroes, because of the impact they have on society, and certainly that impact is great, not to disregard or dismiss that, but I think that in sort of unpacking that, it's like, okay, I'm not, my value isn't based on what I do, and that was a huge process, and still even is something that I'm even working towards unpacking even to this very day. But I think that part of that process of then making the decision to say, like, I want to go for this, started off with saying, okay, who am I without these credentials? Who am I without that title, of being a physician who sees patients? And part of that process was realizing that regardless of if I'm seeing patients or not, or if I'm working in medicine or not, that part of my identity is not necessarily going away, you know, and that experience of being a physician and becoming a physician, influences every other aspect of what I do, just as every other part of who I am influences every other part of who I am, so that's part of what I want to, you know, remain, in the mindset of and understanding that, whatever I do, whether it's being on stage, whether it's being a physician, those are all equally important parts of who I am. And they all add up, to making, the full picture and the full perspective of who I am. So I hope
I
that
love
answers the question.
it did, and I love that response, and one of the things that I pulled from that is when you said they add up. I think sometimes we think that we have to be the physician or the actor
Mm,
or the doctor or the life coach
mm,
when it's and there doesn't have to be an or, and also too we don't have to tie our identity to
mm,
a title, to a job, and to a role. And that was something I experienced as well as I went through my reset. And it was of, okay, Raven, who are you? Why are you
mm,
here? What purpose do you serve? Are you living full? Are you living whole? Are you happy?
mm.
When you wake up every day, are you happy? Are you looking forward to? Are you looking at life like I get to, not I got to?
Yeah.
And that was huge
Mhm,
for a part of my reset.
mm,
And you had a quote in your book, and you said it's an interesting place to be in when you finally get what you have worked hard for
mhm.
and not be totally satisfied.
Mhm. Yeah.
Unpack that for me.
That is the story of my life. um, I worked a long time to become a physician, and going into the process, of studying towards becoming a physician, I never really took a step back and really made sure that this is what I really wanted, you know? Um, and I think that that is what I meant by that last part of the quote, which is, and not get what you really wanted, because I never really asked myself, what do you really want? And then really paid attention to what that answer was for myself. So, starting off the process of becoming a physician, I was just going through the motions. And, I did relatively well at it so that, I was able to, make it very far. I was able to become a physician, to, train at some of the, most prestigious institutions in the world, even. And even with all of that, even with all of the prestige, the accomplishments, as you were saying, before, where's the joy in that? And it got to the point where I kind of had to get clear that, you know, even though I've achieved all of this, I'm still missing that joy. And I think that a lot of people experience that. They work hard towards one thing that perhaps they wanted to do for a long time, or they perhaps didn't really know for sure whether it was what they really wanted to do, but perhaps other people told them that you might be good at this, or you should pursue this because you're talented at this, or you do well at that. And then they end up working years and years towards that. They do very well in it, and then they sort of look up after all the years of blood, sweat, and tears, and they realize, wait, is this what I really want? So, I will say that that was something that I had to go through for myself. And, I will say that having gone through that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, you know? Um, but it was a wake up call. It was
Mm,
an opportunity for me to say, okay, it was an opportunity for me to get clear for what I do really want, and then to be intentional which is going into the reset part, you know, about where I did want to move going forward and how I was going to get
Hmm. That is so interesting about finding that, I did all of this work, I did all of this training, all of this education, all of the blood, sweat, and tears, but was it what I wanted?
there.
And I think that's so interesting from the standpoint of you were good at it, you were great at it, you were excellent at it because that's what you've been trained to do. And you're an intelligent and smart person. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that's what your purpose to do. That doesn't mean that's what gives you that joy.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about resets, and that is the crux of your new book that you have out, Project Reset.
Mhm.
So how do you define a life reset? What does that mean to you?
I'm glad you asked that. And I alluded to that a little bit in my answer from before, but I define a life reset as an intentional action or an intentional movement towards making your life more authentic to who you really are. And that can be in any area. That can be in career. You know, we talked a lot about my personal career related reset, but that can also be as it relates to relationships. That can be as it relates to personal expression. And I've had a lot of experiences along the way in that area as well, in which I've made a reset towards becoming a more authentic representation of who I am at my core in how I present myself to the world. And one of the things that I like to say, you know, one of the other major areas in which I've made a reset is my area of gender expression and sexual identity. And I identify as queer and non binary. And I will say that in the process of becoming more aware and then also making the decision, the intentional choice to be more, to live out loud, if you will, um, that required a process in which I had to take some steps and do some things that were, you know, things that I couldn't necessarily do sort of without that intentionality. And there were bright moments along the way in that regard, and there were some difficult moments. You know, one of the other things I talk about in the book is, you know, being willing to ruffle some feathers, you know, or being willing to not have everyone agree or be excited for the direction in which you're moving for your reset. Because there are some things, and I'm talking broadly again, you know, there are some areas or some, you know, decisions that you might make as it relates to where you want to make a reset that other people might not understand or they might not agree with as it relates to that being the area that you should move toward. But, you know, going back to what I define as a reset, it's an authentic representation of who you are at your core. And only you know who you are authentically at your core. You can have other people sort of feed into you in terms of like giving you feedback in terms of what, you know, perhaps might be authentic to you, but only you know, only you, Raven, know, you know, who you are authentically at your core. And for each person watching or listening to this, only you have that information. So only you can make that determination as to what is authentic for you and what is an area of reset that makes sense for you. So with that understanding, with that awareness, I challenge people to move boldly towards their area of reset in being an authentic version of who they are.
That's so real in terms of being an action taker. One of the things that I was talking actually right before this conversation with a friend about is not liking the lukewarmness, not liking the what ifs or the fence riders, and deciding, you know what, this is what's right for me and for my life. And and another thing too, there's a book that I read, it's called The Gift of Fear. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. I recommend it to everyone. And one of the key messages or points in the book is when you have a feeling, an uneasiness, a gut feeling. Some people call it their intuition, some people call it discernment, gut feeling, whatever you want to call it. When you know something you know what? This doesn't sit right with me.
Mhm.
This something is making me uncomfortable. We
Mhm.
have to listen to that. And you just share with us so perfectly and well said that only you know. And I think when you really spend that time with yourself, that quiet time, that meditation, that reflection in understanding you, that you can start seeing clearly, okay, what feels right and what feels good for me. And you will have, as you said, a lot of people, that may want to influence you and who may be well intentioned as well,
Mhm.
but they don't know what's right for you. They don't necessarily know. And for me, one of the things I'm recognizing is my goals and the visions. They weren't given my visions. When
Mm.
I wake up in the morning and I'm happy, or I'm not happy doing something that it doesn't sit well with me, I feel like you make that decision. You can choose to be stuck and you can choose to be unstuck. You can choose to live a life that feels authentic to who you are and that feels good for you. So I appreciate everything that you just shared with us for that. So before I ask my last question, where can we find you and how can we work with you if we're looking for our reset?
Thank you. So I'm on Instagram at Black Millennial Coach. I'm also on Facebook. You can find me. I'm Ryan hyphen Black Millennial Coach. So I'm on social media. You can find me there. I have a web show that I upload to Instagram and YouTube. It's called Real Talk with Ryan. So I release episodes on a weekly basis there. My website has information as it relates to working with me as a coach. And my website is www.drryanlang, that's drryanlang.com. So if your listeners, supporters would like to visit me there, I have some resources, including my book, that they'd be able to locate there as well.
Awesome. And final question, what's been your greatest lesson in your reset?
So I would say the biggest lesson is remain flexible.
Mm,
It's okay to be specific about what you want, in which direction you want to move toward for your reset, but be open minded that you might learn more information along the way that might influence you towards course correcting or influencing you towards honing that vision or honing that reset in perhaps a narrower focus or a different direction. And that's okay, because as you're getting more information about who you are authentically, you might learn some new information, or you might find out more about a path that you may not have given serious consideration to before, that might make that path seem more aligned or closer aligned to who you actually are and what it is that you actually do want. So that has been my experience. I've had experiences where I have thought, I've wanted to do this, I've wanted to go in this direction, and along the way, in terms of pursuing that, I've learned some things about things I didn't even really know that much about before. But in terms of being open minded, I was willing to talk to people, get more perspectives, and I ended up pursuing things that were slightly different, but in the end, better aligned for what it is that I needed to do. So be flexible.
all right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Ryan, for your time today. Everyone, follow Ryan on Instagram at Black Millennial Coach. His content is so good. I watch it every day. He has midweek check ins and a Real Talk with Ryan regular series on his platform. Also, go into Amazon right now and get his book, Project Reset, the guide to your authentic life transformation. It's authentic, it's inspirational, and transformational for anyone seeking a reset. Thank you, everyone, again for watching. If you like this or think this will be helpful to a friend, family member, or colleague, all I ask is that you share. And remember, a reset is always available to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Raven. Thank you, everyone.